Hello, big boy. It's Baba. Now then, today we have a new story. Now, this one seems like it's a little bit strange. It's all about the weather. If I look out my window right now, I can see that it is raining. A bit like what's on the front cover of the book. Except it's not raining where they are. It kind of is raining, but it's actually food that's falling out the sky. It's very weird. And this story is called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and it's written by Judy Barrett and illustrated, which means drawn and painted, by Ron Barrett. They might be brother and sister, or they could be husband and wife. Who knows? Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we each could eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed towards the kitchen ceiling, and landed right on Henry. After we realised that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay a town, a tiny town, called Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate, it all came from the sky. Can you see they're looking up to see if some food is coming from the sky? Whenever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain, it never snowed snow, and it never blew just the wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of giant hamburgers. Now How strange. The people could watch the weather report on the television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups and glasses, forks, spoons, knives and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and usually there were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. Can you see the dog? It's even got its bowl on its head, catching all the soup. It looks like pumpkin soup. The menu varied and changed. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down from the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards too. For lunch, one day, frankfurters, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby, and when the wind changed to the east, it brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by a gradual clearing with a wonderful jello setting in the west. Look at the size of that jelly in the mountains, Mackenzie. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and the turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Can you see the dogs there watching? Life for the people in Chew and Swallow was delicious until the weather took a change for the worse. The newspaper says, "Spaghetti ties up town. Record-breaking pasta fall causes chaos." Oh no. It's been raining pasta, Mackenzie. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day. Stinky. The next day there was only broccoli, all soggy and overcooked. The next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Blech. Another day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. Look, there it is. I can see a fish in the pea soup fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye, and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got more and more stale. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of it's so heavy. So they had to close the school because, well, what are you going to do if your school is covered in maple syrup and pancakes? Would you like your school covered in maple syrup and pancakes, Mackenzie? I bet you would. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a giant stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running around to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and tomato pulp everywhere. Can you see the man in the bath? Can you see the sailor in the boat? Normally there's a dog. Can you see the dog? No, but I can see the turkey though, right there. Look at the weather. The sanitation department gave up. The job was just too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many outhouses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Can you see the big gherkin? It's gone through the house. Can you see the dog? I think it's stuck in some maple syrup. Uh-oh, things have got really out of hand. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale sandwich bread and put them sandwich style with peanut butter. And they took absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. Can you see the dog? After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in a new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on the shelves, packaged in boxes, cans and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made up of fried eggs. And no one ever got hit by a hamburger again. Nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were all too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. And I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs to breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledging with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. I don't think that's butter, do you? Can you tell what it is behind Grandpa? I don't think it's butter. The end. Now that is a good story. Just make sure you check the weather, because you never know, Mackenzie. It could be raining hamburgers, and we don't want that, do we? Night night, big boy. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite, because Baba loves you. Night night.